The trumpet was halfway through the last post when my son stepped out of the formation, and the rose I had carried for 40 years did not, after all, leave my hand at the rope line. He carried it for me. He had been carrying it all morning. I am 67. I served in my time in the same long-ago campaign the memorial of the Long Hill was raised to remember. I came home. 804 men whose names are cut into the granite at the facing wall did not. I have stood at the rope line on the 23rd of October for 39 of the last 40 years, and I had never once seen a guard of the household detail break formation. Not for cold, not for sun. Not for the foreign delegations who came in the early years, mistaking the silence of the men in scarlet for a silence that could be filled. My son is Corporal Owen Mossway of the 2nd Company, House of Ravenhurst. He is 26. He has stood the ceremonial detail at the Long Hill Memorial for 2 seasons. He is the cleanest drill in his company and the quietest man in his platoon, and he has never in his life failed at composure. I knew the man in red wool at the 3rd position from the right of the honor formation, even from 40 yards across the public ground, because a father knows his own son under any uniform that has ever been sewn. The morning was October bright, the sky that hard-washed pallor the autumn capital wears when the wind is coming off the Long Hill country to the north. The memorial stood as it has always stood, a low granite plinth on a circle of pale stone, 8 steps up from the public ground, the regimental crest carved into the facing wall, and below it the 804 names cut in 3 columns. At the plinth's foot, the eternal flame in its bronze basin, no taller than a man's hand. The colors of the Long Hill Regiment, furled and at half-staff. The honor formation of 6 guards in scarlet ceremonial dress, drawn up 10 paces in front of the plinth, immaculate, motionless, their bayonets catching the light like 6 small bright marks against the granite. Behind them on the lower step the wreath-laying delegation, the Lord Chamberlain in black morning dress, 4 members of the Veterans' Council in dark suits and old medals, the regimental colonel in service dress. Behind us the public, a rope line of perhaps 300, old soldiers mostly, widows, a handful of grown sons and daughters who had come, the way I had come, with a single rose for a name on the granite. There were 2 news cameras at the perimeter, one on a tripod at the press cordon, the second on a cameraman's shoulder, panning slowly. I noted them and I forgot them. 40 years of these mornings teaches you to notice cameras the way you notice weather. They are not what the day is for. I had come for Captain Harland Veers. Captain Veers was 29 when he died at the foot of the 3rd Ridge on the 2nd day of the fighting, on the 17th of November in the long-ago year I do not need to name. I was 19. I was a private in his company. He had, and I will not embroider this, turned back when he did not have to bring out a man who could not bring himself out. The man he turned back for was my father. My father was a sergeant in the same company. He had been hit twice, the 2nd time in the thigh, and was lying in dead ground 100 yards forward of our last position. The captain reached him. The captain got him onto his shoulder. The captain carried him 50 of the 100 yards. The captain was hit in the back halfway through the 50 and he kept going. He laid my father down on the safe side of the ridge. He turned to call for the medic. He did not finish the call. My father lived. He came home with a stick. He died in the spring of the year I turned 41 with my mother's hand in his, and he did not in all those years go a single anniversary morning without standing at this rope line with a white rose for Captain Harland Veers. He passed me the rose when he was 70, and the 8 stone steps had become too much for his bad leg. I have carried it for the last 27 years. This year I carried it for the both of us, because Owen knew the story, and I had told him the night before that this year was the 40-year mark, and his grandfather, if he had lived, would have wanted his uniform at the memorial. We had not in the conversation said anything else. I stood at the rope line with my own rose, the one with the small folded square of white silk wrapped about its stem the way my father had taught me in the old style. I had not understood, until the trumpet was sounding the last post, and my son was taking the first of the 3 steps, that he had been carrying his grandfather's rose in his white glove since 5 o'clock that morning. The ceremony moved as ceremonies move. The Lord Chamberlain stepped from the lower step to the plinth and laid the great laurel wreath at the granite's foot. The colors of the regiment dipped slowly to the salute. The bugler at the eastern edge of the circle lifted his instrument. The last post began. There is a thing the last post does to old soldiers that I do not know how to put into words. It is not grief exactly. It is the room grief lives in. It opens, you stand in it. The trumpet's notes climb, and the room is wider than the wind and the sky and the granite. And inside that room are all the men who never came home and all the small particular things they will never do again. The cups of tea, the cold mornings, the children they did not have, the wives they would have grown old with, and the room holds it all, briefly. And then the last note falls away and the room closes, and you are an old man at a rope line again with a flower in your hand. The note had begun to fall. The colors were rising from the salute. The honor formation began its slow ceremonial step backward 2 paces to allow the delegation to descend the 8 stone steps in good order. The Lord Chamberlain turned. The Veterans' Council turned. The regimental colonel turned. The slow march back to the line of cars at the western arc of the circle began. And then my son stepped out of the formation. He took the first step the way he had been taught to take a ceremonial step, heel raised, toe pointed, the slow extension of the knee, the controlled descent of the boot onto the stone with no sound but the kiss of polished leather on cut granite. The second step the same, the third the same. He had moved 3 paces forward of the formation, in line with the plinth and offset by perhaps 2 feet to the left of the laurel wreath, where the column of names began at the granite's left edge with the rank of captain and the name H.R. Veers. He went down on one knee, not theatrically, not the way a man kneels when he wants to be seen kneeling, the way a soldier kneels who has been taught to kneel, the right knee meeting the stone in a single clean line, the left boot flat, the back straight, the chin level, the bearskin steady. He brought his right hand from his side, the white glove opened, the rose was small in it. He laid it at the foot of the granite, against the corner of the laurel wreath, with the stem pointed inward toward the names, the way my father had laid every rose for 40 years. He drew his glove back. He came up off the knee in a single movement. He took 3 slow ceremonial steps backward into his position in the line. The formation closed around him as if he had never moved. I do not know how long the whole thing took. I have watched the clip many hundreds of times since, the way the country has watched it, and the timestamp on the longest cut puts it at 23 seconds from his first step out to his last step back. It felt, at the rope line, like a great quiet had opened in the middle of the morning and then closed again, and the morning had gone on. Nobody in the public made a sound. Nobody in the honor formation moved their eyes. The colors did not falter. The Lord Chamberlain 3 paces away did not turn his head. He had heard the boots, 6 of them where there should have been 12 for those few seconds, and then 12 again, and he had not turned his head. The commandant of the honor detail was standing at the eastern arc of the circle, behind the formation where the senior NCO of the day always stands. I saw him only because I knew where to look for him. He had seen Owen step out. He had seen Owen lay the rose. He had seen Owen step back. He did not move. He did not, that I could tell from 40 yards, change his expression by a thread. He stood as he had stood. And as my son passed him, in the slow march back to the regimental vehicles at the western arc, the commandant gave him, without turning, without lifting his eyes from the middle distance over the granite, a single small nod. One nod. The kind of nod a senior gives a junior who has done a thing the senior is not going to put into words because the thing does not need words. I had not, in all of it, breathed. It was the shoulder camera at the eastern perimeter that caught the whole thing. He had been panning slowly across the honor formation when Owen took the first step. The cameraman, a man in his 50s who had filmed this memorial every year for 19 years, had the discipline to hold the shot. He held it through the kneeling and the rose and the return to formation, and he held the camera on the granite for 3 more seconds after Owen was back in the line, on the small white shape of the rose against the laurel and the granite's gray, and then he panned very slowly to the colors at the staff. The clip is 26 seconds long. The country has watched it. It went up on the noon broadcast. The anchor introduced it with 1 sentence and let it run with no voiceover. The studio cameras came back on her face when the clip ended. She did not, I am told, say anything for the first 3 or 4 seconds. Then she said only that the rose had been laid for Captain Harland Veers, killed in action on the 17th of November of the long-ago year, and that the guard who had laid it was the grandson of the sergeant the captain had died trying to bring out. I do not know how the network learned that. I had not told them. Owen had not told them. The regiment must have, through one of the quiet channels regiments use when a thing of theirs has gone into the world. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, the first photographs began to come in from the smaller memorials of the country. A small town in the western counties has its own memorial to its sons of the Long Hill Regiment, a granite block, 14 names, in a square outside the parish church. Somebody, a woman, the local paper said, had walked the 8 blocks from her flat to the square with a single white rose and laid it at the granite. By 3 o'clock the square had 11 roses. By 4 it had 50. By 6 the parish constable had stopped counting. There are 340 memorials to the Long Hill Regiment across the country. The smallest is a plaque on a school wall in a fishing village on the eastern coast. By dusk, the photograph from the village showed a small heap of white at the foot of the plaque that had been a single rose at noon. At the National Memorial, where the honor formation had long since marched off, and the public ground had been reopened to the afternoon visitors, the granite at the foot of the names was carpeted in roses by 6 o'clock. By 8 the carpet had reached the second stone step. The Lord Chamberlain's office issued that evening a single short statement, which I read in the next morning's paper and have kept. It said only that the act of the corporal of the household detail had been an act of a private soldier on his own initiative, that no protocol had been broken that any officer of the household considered material, and that the household stood with the families of the Long Hill Regiment, as it had for 40 years, and would stand for as long as there were names to read. That was all the statement said. It did not name my son. Owen's name went into the papers anyway, the way names will, but it did not come from the household. He came off duty at 7 that evening. He came home in his greatcoat over his ceremonial, and he came in through the back door the way he has come in through the back door since he was a boy. He took his bearskin off in the kitchen. He set it on the dresser. He put his gloves beside it. The right one, the one that had held the rose, he set down by itself, slightly apart, the way you set down a thing that has been doing a job and is now done. He did not at first speak. He sat at the kitchen table. I poured him a cup of tea. My wife, she had not gone to the memorial, and we have never asked her to, sat down across from him and put her hand over his on the table. He let it sit under hers. He carried Granda, Owen said eventually. He was looking at the table. He carried him 50 yards with 2 in him. He did, I said. You never asked me to take the rose. I didn't know you'd taken it. Owen looked up. He looked at me. He has his grandfather's eyes. He has had them since he was a boy. I took it at 5 this morning, he said. When you went up the path to the car, I went back into the kitchen. It was on the dresser. I knew what it was. I took it. I wrapped it the way Granda wrapped them. He reached into the breast of his tunic. He took out a small folded square of white silk. He laid it on the table between us. He pushed it slowly across the wood toward me. For you, he said. I did not pick it up that night. I have it now on the shelf in my study, beside my father's regimental cap badge, and a small framed copy of the photograph of Captain Veers that hangs in the regimental museum. The silk is folded the way Owen folded it. I have not opened it. I will not. The silk was the wrapping the rose had been wrapped in, and the wrapping was the thing my father had taught me, and that I had not, after all, needed to teach my son, because he had been watching me wrap them for 26 years. We sat at the kitchen table a long time, the 3 of us. We spoke at last about Captain Veers. I told Owen properly what I had told him, only the broad shape of over the years, how the captain had laughed, his habit of polishing his own boots in the line, because he said an officer who would not polish his own boots had no business asking a man to polish his rifle, the night before the second day, and the song the company had sung in the bivouac, and the look the captain had given my father across the fire when my father had sung the second verse alone because nobody else could remember the words. We spoke until the tea was cold, then we sat a while longer without speaking. Then my son went upstairs to change out of the scarlet, and the day, which had been the longest day of my life since the 17th of November, ended at a kitchen table with the unopened silk on the wood between us. The memorial of the Long Hill stands as it has always stood. Captain Harland Veers's name is at the left edge of the first column, the third name down, the rank cut deeper than the names below it the way the old stonecutters did the officers. On the morning of the 23rd of October each year, the wreath is laid, the colors are dipped, the last post is played, the honor formation stands in its line. Owen is back at his post. He has not since that morning said another word about it to me, or, that I know of, to anyone. The commandant of the honor detail has not said another word about it either, except by way of the single small nod at the western arc of the circle, which I have not seen the like of from a senior NCO before or since. The country has moved on to other things, as the country always does. But there are 340 memorials to the Long Hill Regiment, and on the morning of the 23rd of October next year, and the year after, and the year after, there will be white roses laid at the foot of every one of them, by hands the regiment will never know, and the 804 will be remembered in a way they were not, for 39 of the last 40 years, before my son took 3 small steps and laid a flower. I sit at my desk in the evenings sometimes and look at the folded silk on the shelf. I think about the man in scarlet wool who did not move except for the 23 seconds when he did, and about the man whose name is at the granite's left edge, and about the sergeant who came home with a stick because the captain had turned back. I think about how a thing carries forward, from a father to a son to a grandson, by way of a flower in a glove. The trumpet falls, the colors rise, the honor formation closes, the country lays its roses down. And the man who does not move, on the morning he moves, moves a nation.